Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Redemption in a Worthy World in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 11, School and Sakura. Sunrise found Sasuke actually sleeping in his bed, for once, but with a very long scroll still unfurled by his bedside. Unlike his previous reading, this scroll was color-coded, with red ink for subjects Kakashi had told him he wasn't allowed to talk about, and blue ones that he was. There was, dispiritingly, far more red ink than blue, but Sasuke found himself looking forward to the day. Class would be boring, his fellow classmates annoying and troublesome, and Naruto would no doubt also still be noisy, but it left him less time alone with his thoughts. The Uchiha clan had been known to be quiet and secretive, which, Sasuke knew, was code for brooding, and as the last Uchiha in the compound, Sasuke had become a world-class brooder. If there had been a brooding portion of the graduation exam, he would have already passed it, with Shino Abarame as a distant second. Annoyed with himself, he tore his eyes away from the scroll and dragged himself into the shower. As he half-heartedly attempted to wrestle his hair into shape before abandoning it to its usual feathered sprawl, he heard a knock at the door. He was only partly annoyed to see it was Hound, mask over his face once more, who was there with a cheerful "Yo," when he opened it. "Don't you ever sleep?" "Only in 90-minute intervals, 3 hours if I'm lucky." "You should treasure your sleep, Sasuke." "I would if I didn't have class." "Why are you here so early anyway?" Hound shrugged, his armor clanking slightly with the motion. "Shift change, as usual. I could just wait around for you to leave, but you have perfectly comfortable chairs inside. And tea," he added pointedly. Sasuke scowled. "Normally I invite guests into my house, they don't invite themselves. And how do you keep getting past the estate barriers anyway?" Hound tipped his mask back, then looking around guiltily before replacing it, granting Sasuke a glimpse of the red eye on his left side. "Sherry-nan, remember? Your father added me to the barriers and the clan scroll as an Uchiha out of formality. Only ever that, though," he added hastily, holding up his hands as Sasuke closed the door behind them. "Don't expect me to move in here." The silence told him everything he needed to know about that particular idea. Kakashi leaned against the doorframe, mask hooked to his hip as Sasuke threw together breakfast, which consisted of toast and half a vegetable drawer in a blender, and winced as the machine roared in the corner. "You never mentioned how you got that Sherry-nan." "The scroll said Obito Uchiha gave it to you, that he was a hero of some kind of battle." Kakashi winced and contemplated if simply returning to the trees instead of knocking would have been easier. Probably. Could he ever really say what Obito meant to him? How much his gift had seen, or what it had helped him do, both good and ill, in Umbu? He doubted it. Sasuke was spreading jam on his toast with a methodical intensity and still staring at him. Curse the brat for asking such hard questions. Why couldn't he have asked if Kakashi knew any fire jutsu? He knew plenty of those. "The hero of the Battle of Konobe Bridge," prompted Sasuke. "Did you seriously forget?" "Never." Kakashi shot forward, boosting away from the door and sharply gripping the back of one of the chairs to stop himself from slamming the table outright. "I could never forget something like that, what he did for me." There was silence as Sasuke looked guilty, then busied himself with eating the toast. "So he gave you the Sherry-nan, why?" "To protect my comrades, to protect the village. He made me promise." Sasuke didn't think it was possible to quietly finish off toast, but was making every effort to do so. "Those who don't follow the rules are scum, but those who don't protect their comrades, are even less than scum." Kakashi's voice was low and Sasuke wasn't sure if the man was addressing him or not. They were both spared the awkwardness of the conversation by a tingling feeling on the back of their neck. In an instant, Hound's mask was back on and Sasuke was standing, mentally cataloging where weapons were in the house. "Someone's at the gates to the compound," said Hound, his voice smooth and professional once more. "I'll check." He disappeared out the door in a perfect shunshin and Sasuke sat back down to his smoothie. The morning had found Kat, known without her mask as Yojao Izuki, where she belonged, namely in bed along with most of Konoha. She rolled out of bed, cast a fond gaze at the still sleeping Hayato, and rolled through her own morning routine, which involved considerably more hidden knives than most civilians or even shinin. She met a wavering owl halfway above the Kanrakugai district and signaled her formal acceptance of the shift change, but the large man still waved her over. "He's out and about early this time," he grumbled. "Must have been eager to talk to Uchiha again. You say anything to him?" Kat shook her head. "Nothing important, just advice on how to manage today. They're going to be swarmed with questions." He looked at her curiously. "What do you think the odds are they let something slip?" "I'm not taking that bet, Hojiki." "More specific." "Odds they spill an S-class secret. 60 in favor for direct, 30% it's accidental, and 10 says Uchiha somehow gets the kid to talk around it." "Kid's smart." Owl scribbled something on a notepad and stopped, pencil poised. "Want in on the pool? Most of the Fox squad came by last night to trade stories, but you only get the really juicy ones if you ante up." She huffed in fond exasperation. "That's cruel and unusual punishment, but I'm in. Put me down for half a month's pay on Uchiha talking the kid out of something direct." Owl whistled. "Living dangerously, Cat. I thought you were saving up for that blade in Tanzuniki Square. It'll be worth it to see Bat's face if I win." "Can't argue with that." They looked down to see the small orange and yellow blur turn the corner towards the Uchiha district, waving up at them even as he came into view, voice piercing in the morning air. "Heath Kat-san." She sagged for a moment, but straightened and ducked behind a water tower. "I still haven't figured out how he does that. We hide our chakra and stay out of sight 90% of the time." Owl shrugged. "Just accept it, it's my cue to leave anyway." He disappeared in a swirl of leaves as Naruto continued to shout at the general vicinity. "Kat-san! Kaot-san!" She dropped down in front of him, rolling to soften the 3-story landing even with chakra, and hissed. "Quit shouting, will you? We can't guard you if we're not stealthy." Naruto kept walking. "But I always know where you guys are even when you're hiding, so you must not be very good at it. Or I'm pretty awesome. And we're in the village, aren't we? Danzo-sama isn't going to hurt you guys." Kat fell into step beside him even as every instinct of her training told her to go up, to hide, to cast a genjutsu, anything that wasn't walking in the middle of the street. "Damn that Kakashi for falling to pieces." "Umbu is supposed to be secret, just as you are," she replied shortly. "I hope you remember that today, because I'll have to report on this to the Hokage." "Will I get you in trouble, just for talking to you?" "Maybe," she reluctantly conceded. "I'll be lectured at about the need for secrecy and so will you, if the council has finished losing their minds about Saturday's little spectacle." Naruto grinned up at her. "That's fine. I get lectured at by Jiji and Iruka-sensei all the time, and then I have to do chores, but that's not so bad." "Do Umbu do chores?" she thought. "Supply runs and sentry duty count, I suppose. But don't ask for specifics," she warned as he opened his mouth. "So does that mean guarding me is a chore?" She had to head this off at the pass. "Not really," she lied. "Mostly it's a chance for Umbu to rest after a difficult mission or if their minds need some time to heal. You're not actively trying to kill us, so it's an easier assignment than most." Naruto looked guilty. "So when I covered Eagle-san in blue paint or hid from Bat-san all day dash?" "Yes." Kat was brutal in her assessment. "You were causing unnecessary work for shinobi who deserve some rest and recuperation." Her voice softened slightly. "Bat was quite impressed though, as am I. You've got half the barracks wondering how you catch us." "Oh, that's easy." Naruto beamed. "You guys all smell horribly." She blanched and reflexively checked. Yes, she had put deodorant on and was glad of it. Konoha summers could be torture in dark Umbu gear, especially the mask headband. "I don't smell." "Well, not as much as some of the others. You smell like somebody burnt a piece of pork, just a bit." He wrinkled his face in disgust. Monkey-san smelled like he died. They were silent as she thought. Monkey had a dark reputation in Umbu, even darker than friend killer Kakashi, but every 6 months there he was, signing on to the Umbu roster again. And psychologists kept clearing him, so he stayed. Apparently, all he took were assassination missions except for the rare times someone shoved him onto the Fox Squad roster. That made sense. But how far can you smell us from? She interrogated. None of the Inyazuka or even Kakashi ever mentioned anything like this. Naruto shrugged. Maybe 2 blocks. 3 if you aren't hiding your chakra. Can you tell all of us apart? Not really. The more time I spend around someone, the easier it is to pick them out. The little bastard actually winked at her. Hound-san is easy because he's been around a bunch, but you're new, so it should take a month or so. Most of the Umbu-san who show up regularly I can pick out. But, that's, she sputtered. Not an exceptionally far distance, but for him to spot Umbu who were trying to hide, even ignoring the destructive potential of the Kyuubi, he could be an effective sensor shinobi. Annoying, right? Cat huffed. Uzumaki-san, I don't know if I should be happy or mad at you. How come? Your sensory ability, even without training, is well above average, if lacking in distance. I'm tempted to ask, she trailed off, remembering the last time an Akademi student was fast-tracked through the ranks. The depopulated Uchiha district they turned towards now stood as a testament for how bad an idea that was. Yeah, Kat-san. She waved a dismissive gesture at Naruto. Forget it. Go see Uchiha-san. Naruto ran full force towards the Uchiha district walls, only to bounce off the air in front of the gates like a pinball. He skidded to a stop with no discernible injuries, sheepish. Oh, yeah. We should probably call Sasuke somehow. Kat rolled her eyes behind the mask. He'll have felt that, don't worry. A few seconds later, Hound appeared in a swirl of leaves and relaxed his grip on his sword in the same moment. Of course, I should have expected. He drawled, making a horse sign and waving them through. They walked through the gates with no discernible resistance as Naruto turned to Hound. Hey Hound-san, can I get Sasuke to add me to the barrier so I don't do that next time? We'll see, was all Hound said. Naruto sulked the rest of the trip until he spotted Sasuke loitering in front of his home, whereupon he launched himself down a quarter of the street to engulf the last Uchiha in something that was half a tackle and half a hug. Sasuke tossed him over his shoulder on pure instinct and opened his mouth to apologize as Naruto was dusting himself off. Nah, it's no worry, said the nonchalant Uzumaki. I can walk off all sorts of stuff. One time I fell while playing in a construction site and was healed by the time I got home. It must be some Uzumaki thing from my mom, right? The Umbu exchanged a glance. It wasn't. I'm an idiot. We're going to be late for class as it is. What if we get Kat-san and Hound-san to carry us there? We'll be on time for sure, then. We're not carrying you, stated Kat flatly. You both have working feet. The boys immediately began running towards the entrance to the Uchiha district as she shot Hound a look. Are you always going to make me be the bad mask here? Hound winked from behind his mask. As long as I can get away with it. In the end, the last Uzumaki and the last Uchiha arrived at Konoha's Ninja Academy 6 seconds later than the final bell. Their seats were both on the far side of the room, so both were forced to endure the long, slow, agonizing walk across the rows of staring students who ignored pencil bags and folders in favor of gaping like open-mouthed fish at the late arrivals. All right, settle down, shouted Imano Irika, the scarred academician. Though there was some whispering, the class on environmental traps passed without incident. Lunch, however, proved to be an altogether different matter. Where did you get that sword? What did the Hokage say? Are you in trouble? I can't believe you actually threatened one of the adults. You'll never become a ninja like this, Naruto. Yeah, they're gonna kick you out for this. It's not like he's good at anything unlike Sasuke. Hey, barked Sasuke. Shut your mouths. But the questions and insults just kept coming. Are the Umbu gonna lock you up? Sasuke-kun, you looked so cute in that armor. Shut up Ino pig, Sasuke doesn't care about that. What did he say about that guy last week? Yeah. Do you know him? Is it a secret? Now, placated Irika, wading through the crowd of students around Naruto and Sasuke with his hands moving students back from the boys. I'm sure we're all very interested to hear what Sasuke-san and Naruto-san have to say about their weekend, but let's keep this polite. There is absolutely no call for anyone to be kicked out of this class, let alone the village. You are all still under my authority, and if any one of you say a word about such punishment again, I'll be calling your parents. That at least got the kids to back off, and Sasuke was surprised to feel Naruto bumping into his side. Sasuke tapped his knuckles against the blondes in silent support, who was glaring at the girl who'd asked that. Geez, yummy. It's not like I threw a kunao at you, just some wrinkly old turnip head. A few of the students giggled at that as Iruka, seeing Naruto was supported by Sasuke, made his way back to his desk. She stuck her tongue out at the other blonde. Not like that's any better. Sasuke-kun, why'd you even pick him for your big ceremony? You know we'd love to help you. The girl batted her eyelashes at him, and Sasuke just stared back coldly. Naruto's, he paused, remembering all the red on that scroll. So much he wasn't allowed to say, secrets sucked. He saved my life on Saturday, so he's good. The only person you're interested in, Iyami, is yourself. Now leave us alone. Some of the kids gasped theatrically, while others owed in appreciation at Sasuke's words. Even more mystery to ponder, but Sasuke had asked them to leave him alone, so they obliged. Now Naruto got the brunt of the attention. So Naruto, tell us how you saved Sasuke's life. If he's saying it, it must be true or pretty juicy. The Uzumaki grinned and prepared to milk this opportunity for all it was worth. Well, it was pouring rain Saturday night, so I'm getting ready to go to bed when I hear screaming and all sorts of noise from my window. I run over and Sasuke's hanging off the edge, and he started to fall. So I jumped out the window and pulled him back up into my apartment. You guys should have seen me, it was totally wicked. Sasuke kicked him under the table. Okay, I opened the window and pulled him back in. Fine, fine. But we got to talking and he helped me figure out all sorts of stuff, like why my birthday sucks, who my mom was, and the Q-dash. You forgot the downstairs tenant, interrupted the last Uchiha. The guy who kept banging on the floor half the night. Naruto looked sheepish but rallied immediately. Yeah, we're a pretty good team, and now we're gonna learn all sorts of stuff about my mom too. She was super badass and her name was Kushina Uzumaki, believe it. He grinned defiantly at the rest of the class, and with their curiosity satisfied, most of the class drifted away. Back in their seats, Shikamaru rolled his eyes. So much bother this weekend. I barely saw my dad. How about you, Koji? The Akimichi shrugged and opened his third bag of chips. Big meeting with the Hokage on Saturday, not much else. What do you think? I think it's above our pay grade. We don't get paid, we aren't even genin yet. Exactly. The Nara fell asleep just as Koji finished off the third bag. Sometimes, a good nap cleared the mind. Naruto, that's dash. Genius, right? Katsan's suggestion was all about redirecting force, you know? Like when you threw me over your shoulder this morning. We can do the same thing with all those girls. Sasuke waited for Naruto to try again. She said if we were friends with one of the girls, she'd get the others to stop bugging you. But I don't want to be friends with any of them. I don't have time for that. You're friends with me, how is this different? You saved my life when I was about to fall out of a window, like I said. I also kicked you in the balls. HN. They sat in silence for a while as their gazes drifted across the room. Hinata Hyuga? She sits next to me and is part of one of those noble clans you mentioned. Kinda cute, too. Too shy. Even if she said you were her husband, none of the girls would listen. Or even hear her in the first place. Ino Yamanaka then. She can take care of herself, no problem. Remember that sparring match she volunteered for with Iyami? Naruto's smile had a bit too many teeth in it. Vividly. That's the problem. She'd never shut up about Sasuke-kun. Naruto turned to him in exasperation. Are you going to nitpick every suggestion I make? There's only so many kids here. And I have so little patience for them. Naruto finished his lunch and Sasuke silently handed over the second bento box he'd packed in his bag. A sight better than mushrooms, but Sasuke hated feeling in debt to anyone. No way, I couldn't dash. Just eat it, idiot. Naruto's token protest vanished as he broke it open and began to eat. Sho, if Ino sh out, how about Sakura? Sasuke was about to ask if he was kidding but stopped. They'd been in class for 2 years, and though he was one of the best in their class, the key words there were one of. Sakura Haruno beat the pants off him in every academic test they'd taken. For him, a 90 was a low grade, but to a perfectionist like Sakura, a 95 was a failure. Naruto glanced over at him, a stray grain of rice stuck to his cheek. What? She's smarter than me. That's something. Naruto was staring now. You're kidding. She's horrid at taijutsu and passable at ninjutsu so far. But she's scored better than me on every test we've ever taken. How do you know that? It's not like our scores are posted on the wall. When someone's beating me, I make it a point to know. Even if she's totally useless as a ninja, she can help us out with this. Come on, nobody's totally useless. I'm supposed to be the dead last, right? And I still saved your butt. You're the great Sasuke Uchiha and you jumped into my window. Your point. Naruto shrugged, uncomfortable with the direction this conversation had taken. People can surprise you. Like me, or Kakashi dash. SHHHH. Sasuke put his hand over Naruto's mouth. We're not supposed to talk about that, remember? In the tree outside, Cat turned to Beetle. Is Hound's name a S-class secret? The other Umbu shook his head. B-class for all our identities, for all the good that does, Miss Purple Hair. She cursed and dug into her back pocket for her wallet. Beetle would be buying the next round of drinks for sure. Inside, the conversation continued. Sasuke, like you said, we still have lots of questions. A girl with a great memory who loves the library could help us find all sorts of stuff. Do I look like I know what filing system they use? He got an Uchiha smile in return. Do you even know how to read? Naruto made a rude hand gesture which drew the wrath of Iruka like a magnet. Naruto Uzumaki, be polite. The blonde flashed a thumbs up and the teacher went back to grading. So what y'all say? Go for it. You go talk to her. Naruto's face turned white. Why should I? You're the popular one. She probably hates my guts. I'm not popular, I'm a genius. Sasuke said scornfully. They're putting me up on a pedestal, just like they did for him. You're the only person I've had a conversation with in Dash. He paused, not liking how long it was taking for him to recall. A while, he finished lamely. Naruto was, for once, silent. They had a knack for getting each other to be a little too honest. Beetle and Cat would have said they were starved for conversation. Look, if this goes wrong, come save me, okay? How will I know what that looks like? When she punches me in the face. Ino and Sakura were deep in discussion about the scraps of news Ino's father had mentioned over dinner when Naruto sidled up. They instantly clammed up and gave him a deeply familiar skeptical eye. Ino spoke first. So what do you want? I was actually hoping to talk to Sakura-chan. Sakura barely stopped herself from glancing back at Sasuke. About what? Well, Naruto was twiddling with his fingers again, but the girls gazed back curiously. There's a whole lot of stuff we're not allowed to talk about Dash. Then don't talk about it, sighed Ino. Fourth rule of shinobi conduct, remember. Naruto rallied back to Sakura. Anyway, I wanted your help doing research. Sasuke says you're really smart, so maybe you can help us. Turns out my mom's Kushina Uzumaki, from some place called Uzushio. Ever heard of it? Sakura was skeptical. Why are you asking me instead of the other adults, like Iruka-sensei? Well, he gestured for her to lean closer, which she did reluctantly. Sasuke's trying to make all the other girls stop bugging him and we think you could help. Sakura was torn between skepticism and hope. She looked over and sure enough, Sasuke was watching them out of the corner of his eye. A chance to get closer to Sasuke-kun and tick off girls like Iyami who'd mocked her for her forehead? It was perfect, until she remembered Ino. She looked back to see her friend watching her and Naruto with the kind of guarded curiosity she showed anyone who wasn't her friend. If Sakura did this, she'd think the pink-haired girl was trying to one-up her with Sasuke, and she could wave goodbye to her first friendship. Naruto's face was nakedly hopeful, and that made her pause too. Wait just a minute. Sakura fled back to Ino. Sasuke-kun and Naruto want me to help them with some research they say would help keep Iyami off their backs. Ino crossed her arms and looked between Naruto, waiting patiently, and Sasuke, who was still in the pose passed down the Akari line for generations with his hands hiding his face. Is this about trying to get Sasuke before me? Yes, you dummy. I'd be blind to not take this chance, as long as I can keep Naruto distracted. His mom sounds interesting, whoever she was, but I can keep Sasuke all to myself if I do this right, thought inner Sakura. It's not, I swear. Naruto's trying to find out more about his mom and Sasuke just doesn't want girls like Iyami trying to get their claws in him. On that, we can agree. Ino shrugged. You'll be begging for my help the longer you spend with Naruto in the library though. Remember that project on chakra formation we had last month? He never answered his phone and vanished. I had to write the whole thing myself. I'll keep that in mind. Sakura walked back to Naruto and nodded her agreement as she glanced over at Ino, who waved at her. Well, go on then. Go find your mystery. Sakura stuck her tongue out at Ino, then remembered Naruto was there and mentally kicked herself. I haven't heard that name you mentioned before, but more info could help. Know anything else about her? Naruto shrugged. Somebody mentioned she had chakra chains that sounded pretty cool, you know. Chakra chains? Iruka-sensei never mentioned anything like that. Like I said, we don't know a whole lot and we've got a lot of stuff to figure out. Wish I knew more. Well, now you've got me curious. Now 2 mysterious family members and a secret jutsu. You think Iruka-sensei would let us into the Chunin floors of the library? I could check the Konoha bloodline compendium and see what I find. Or maybe dash. Naruto groaned as he trailed back towards Sasuke, Sakura chattering up a storm behind him. He'd hoped to get the eggheads to do all the reading, but the prospect of hours stuck in a library with boring books made him want to tear his hair out. He could see Sasuke's smirk from here. Outside, Beetle groaned as Kat pumped her fist. That's 2 S-class secrets right there, Uzushio's fall and chakra chains, eat my shorts. Oh come on, Uzushio's fall isn't an S-class secret, it's in the Chunin history section. How are her chains an S rank anyway? Kat's mask somehow managed to look smug as it looked down at his tree branch. Seeing as how it contained the 9 tails, that makes it a method of high class, uncopiable, sealing jutsu known to less than 5 people. You don't know how many people still alive could use chakra chains, no marks for incomplete answers. How many people inside the Leaf Village, Beetle? Beetle pondered, then hung his head in defeat. Fine, that's 1. Now explain how Uzushio's an S-class. And so the afternoon went, as Indra's arrival caused the first of the changes that would take the world by storm. And if all that could be noticed were 3 children now sitting together at lunchtime, well, that was hardly worth noting, right? Chapter 12, Umbu Fishwives and a Torrid Romance. A week later, they'd made little progress on their mystery parents, which frustrated Sakura to no end. She and Sasuke had spent several hours at the library, which would normally have been perfect to get closer, but Naruto had the obnoxious habit of always butting in just when she'd made up the courage to scoot her chair closer to his, or reach over his shoulder to pick up a book she didn't really need. Inner Sakura was begging for her to belt Naruto when Sasuke wasn't looking, but just as Naruto foiled her plans for Sasuke, Sasuke foiled her plans for Naruto. It was maddening, and she'd had to stop herself from grinding her teeth lately. Ino had said that stress was bad for her complexion. So Sakura returned to their table on the second floor Chunin section of the Konoha Public Records Division with the last of the scrolls available on the Third Great Ninja War and a simmering anger she did her best to not show. Here's the last of it. What did you say your mom's nickname was? She knew what it was, she just wanted to hear Sasuke say it. The boy's expression softened slightly from his resting pout, which made her want to stay, no matter how annoying Naruto was. Raven-winged Mikoto. Sakura sighed dreamily, the way she'd seen ladies in movies do as she sat down and opened the first scroll. Do you think we'll get nicknames one day? When we're all ninja? Sasuke's gaze stayed fixed on his own scroll. I have no doubt. Sakura was smiling her hardest at him. What do you think yours would be? Realizing she wasn't going to stop talking, Sasuke lifted his eyes from the scroll and thought. Sasuke the Avenger sounds good. She was struggling to keep a straight face. What a drama queen. Were all the Uchiha like this? With some difficulty, she forced her thoughts away from scorn, in case it showed on her face. Then Sasuke really wouldn't like her, and she'd have to go crawling back to Ino. She'd already spent enough time about him to notice the Uchiha air could be sensitive, most of which resulted in sullen silences and a refusal to communicate for the rest of a research session. Well, I was thinking about Sakura of the Razor Petals. I've been working on my Kunao accuracy and your friend gave me a few tips. If I get good enough, I could paint my Kunao pink and it could be my signature move. She looked around, but no one was within earshot. Kat-san is really cool, right? Sasuke thought about it for a moment and nodded. She is an adequate teacher. Coming from Sasuke, that was already high praise, so Sakura was glad to have something in common with him at last. You think we could meet tonight and practice together? Sasuke gave her a puzzled look and she kicked herself internally. Really obvious, Sakura, just kiss him and see if he likes it. You can do it. All this setup is putting me to sleep. We're together right now, doing research, aren't we? But a ninja has to keep their mind and body sharp in equal measure, she protested, borrowing from Iruka-sensei's lecture 2 months ago. I might dash. Sasuke's evasion was cut off as Naruto's shout rang out across the silent floor, causing them both to wince. Guys, I found them. They rushed down the aisle, abandoning their scrolls to see Naruto staring at a weathered old book with fascination, which was certainly unusual. Getting him to read for any length was like pulling teeth. Would you shut up? Sasuke scolded, administering a light slap to the side of Naruto's head, but the blonde didn't even notice and that really got their attention. Naruto began to read aloud, but at a lower volume. Diary of Ozenku Akimichi. March 16, year 47 of the modern era. Started the day with a brisk morning run, had eggs and ketchup for breakfast. Look, just skip to the part we're interested in, cut in Sasuke. Naruto shrugged and moved his finger a paragraph lower down. Saw Kushina and Mikoto Uchiha at lunch in camp. They had news from the northern front. They lost cousin Toji in a running battle in Koza Forest, but took out 6 Cloud Ninja each. Kushina said hers were all Jonin, and Mikoto laughed like it was the best joke in the world. I heard they were close, but they're practically sharing shuriken, and in public too. I told them to keep it to the tents and left with my food. Minato ran into me a few hours later on my night patrol with Kakashi and told me to watch my mouth. Idiot, it's not like he's dating her, so why does he think he can stick his nose in people's business? Sounds like that Yellow Flash nickname might have gone to his head. I try not to go to bed mad at anyone, but he can be a real jerk. They pondered the passage in silence for a few moments before Naruto broke it. Man, our parents sound super cool, right Sasuke? They fought 12 ninja at the same time and won. We don't know if they had help, Naruto. This diary sounds pretty unreliable anyway. Sakura stared at him, he'd crossed his arms and looked slightly disappointed. Just because this guy was rude, doesn't mean he lied in his personal diary. Naruto was rereading the passage. Guys, what does sharing shuriken mean? I mean, everybody's got the same ones, right? What's the big deal? The boys shrugged and turned to Sakura who had blushed a deep crimson and shrank back. What, Sakura? She'd heard the phrase late one night, when she'd stayed up to watch a documentary on archaeology and flipped channels to a grown-up drama on HBL she absolutely wasn't allowed to see. Oh, you have to tell them, the looks on their faces will be priceless. Cackled inner Sakura. That doesn't seem very nice though, maybe I should ask an adult first. Fine, ask Kat-san when we all go back to train. You're such a buzzkill, no wonder Sasuke doesn't want to date you. She firmly shut the door in her own face and blinked to find the 2 boys staring at her. What? She snapped, more embarrassed than anything. Keep reading, you Nimrod. HN. It doesn't tell us much on its own, anything else? Naruto flipped a few pages, scanning, and pounced like a fox on a cornered rabbit, his eyes shining with excitement. April 29, year 47 of the modern era. Exhausted by today's fighting, but this journal helps keep things straight. Maybe it'll be a good record for the history books, like Ebisu always talks about. We got diverted to Kozu Forest after reports of heavy fighting and met up with Kushina halfway. Her flak jacket was covered in blood and all torn up, but she said she was fine. Our medical ninja wanted to stop and check her out, but Kushina kept leaping along like the rest of us, so she must have been fine. Kept flickering out of the corner of my eye though, like she was gonna catch fire and she had her teeth bared. Pretty spooky really, and it made me rethink the whole sharing shuriken incident last month. She probably forgot. I really hope she forgot. We got to the battle and most of Kushina's squad fell into the walking wounded category, so we pitched in to help before Cloud overran us. I got tied up fighting some Chunin with a vacuum blade, lost my left shoulder plate before I squashed him. Big surprise, Mikoto was there, covering us with those shadow wings of hers. Naruto elbowed Sasuke, nodded, and Sasuke shoved him back a little harder than necessary. Keep going. Which she adapted from the Nara clan's techniques. I don't really look down on jutsu theft when the Uchiha who did it saved my bacon, but I saved hers from a nasty earth spear, so I think we're even. Unfortunately the second spear through her chest brought her down, and Kushina just freaking lost it. She might be a deviant, but she's something else when she gets going, even without those chains. Tore that guy's throat out with her teeth and went to town on the rest of his squad. Wasn't much left for the Leaf to do after that, but we kept away until it looked like Kushina wasn't going to snap at us, which took the better part of an hour. Fortunately, our medic survived and was able to patch the Uchiha up enough that we could take her back to Tsunade. It was a close thing though. In the interests of my own safety, I tried to apologize to Kushina on the run back to camp, and she nearly bit my head off. Figuratively, thank the sage, but still. I have no idea what Minato sees in her. Sure she's good looking, but Mitsum is actually pleasant to be around. Anyway, rest of the day was taken up by reports to Division Lead Hotaru and searching for a replacement armor piece. Got a Nijirazu for dinner with crispy chicken, so at least today wasn't all bad. Naruto flipped through a few more pages and shrugged. That's it, but wow. My mom really was a badass. Sakura cringed slightly. She killed someone with her teeth, though? That's pretty scary. That Akimichi guy might have had a point. Have you ever heard of someone doing that? Naruto's expression grew dark. It might have been the nin dash. Downstairs tenant, interrupted Sasuke. Idiot. Now it was Sakura's turn to be confused, while Naruto and Sasuke conducted some silent battle of wills in front of her. Are you going to tell me what that's about? HNN for now, that was that. They spent the rest of the hour looking over the other scrolls Sakura had pulled, but still found nothing more on Mikoto Uchiha or Kushina Uzumaki in the files on the Third Great Ninja War. Abandoning the project for now, they returned to the Uchiha Estates dojo, which was rapidly becoming a regular meeting place for additional training after school in the late afternoon, mostly with Hound, who kept his mask on now that Sakura was there. Kat on the other hand, was rapidly and unwillingly becoming Sakura's confidant on the struggles of dating Uchiha while the Uchiha in question lurked in the yard carving branches into short swords. At least he was getting faster at it. Sakura was in the middle of throwing her third volley of kunao at a small wooden target when an idea struck her. Kat-san, do they record Umbu missions during wars? Kat reluctantly turned away from watching Hound and Naruto batter away at each other with sticks. What makes you ask that? Well, we've been doing research about Naruto's mom, but she's never on the duty rosters they kept from the Third Great Ninja War. Sasuke's mom shows up a little bit, but not regularly the way others do. I had a few questions, really. Kat let out a long-suffering sigh and adjusted her stance. Umbu are always iffy about keeping records and plenty of paperwork got lost in the war, or just wasn't preserved in the library. You're letting your imagination get away from you. That bitch is lying to us. Keep going. Sakura sent a mental high five to her mental counterpart and pressed on. Well, people could have lots of reasons to be sneaky during a war, so you're right. It doesn't mean they were Umbu. She pretended to think for a few moments before launching her next kunao with a little more force than she normally did. Can Umbu people date each other? You and Hound could be cute. A few feet away, Hound's water break was interrupted by a magnificent spit take and a bout of coughing as Cat laughed. Wow, Sakura, you've got some bite to you for sure. But no, that wouldn't work. She's taken, and I'm uninterested, piped up Hound. Are officially forbidden from dating each other because it upsets squad dynamics. It happens anyway, said Cat, and her mask seemed to look slightly smug again. Squad relationships aren't unusual in the regular ninja forces, and Umbu's no different, just a little more unorthodox. Danzo is clever enough to let it slide, most of the time. Sakura grinned and threw two kunao simultaneously and didn't even look when the thunks announced they'd hit home. She gestured for Hound and Cat to lean in closer, which they did. You gotta promise to not tell first. They promised, as Naruto looked over to see what was keeping his teacher. It's a secret, but I think Naruto's mom and Sasuke's mom used to date. Cat's mask looked even smugger and Hound collapsed on the grass cackling, which drew the boys over to see what the commotion was. And what makes you say that? Sakura relayed the details of the Akimichi diary they'd found to great amusement. Hound put his hands behind his head and stared up into the sky. That's nothing. One time I went looking for Guy and caught them behind the supply pallets with their hands all up dash. Cat reared back and kicked him in the side. You know, he said weakly, I realize this may not be the best story for young and innocent ears. Sasuke looked mulish and stabbed his half-finished wooden sword into the ground. I'm not innocent, and neither is Naruto. He lived in the Kanrakugai district. Yeah. Wait, what d'ya mean lived? I still do. The Uchiha rolled his eyes. In that dump? No way. You're staying here, we can grab your stuff on the weekend. Naruto protested. Sasuke refused to allow an Uchiha vassal to live in such squalor, and they were off. Sakura sighed and turned back to the quietly amused Umbu. So, girls liking girls, that seems weird, right? Not really, said Hound. It's just the same as girls liking boys, or boys liking boys. It's all natural, really. You'll understand when you're older. People keep saying that, Sakura complained as she resumed her target practice. I want to understand stuff now. You know, I didn't think I'd be having this conversation with anyone until much later. Look what you've dragged me into, Hound. Hate's still working up the courage to propose, if you can believe that. I've seen how many knives you hide on your person, you are a terrifying woman. Cat beamed and handed Sakura another kunao. You can just call me Kakashi while we're here, he admitted, gesturing as Sasuke returned fuming to his sticks and Naruto determinedly whacked away at the air, his feet rooted. I let that slip earlier and the Uchiha put it together. Turns out, Friend Killer Kakashi is a name that is memorable even outside the Umbu. Cat looked down. I never called you that. No, but others did, he said mildly. I'm putting it in the past now. How come? Hound gestured at the three students, all focused on their tasks. To focus on the future. 2 days later, Sasuke finished all his sticks and Cat pronounced them satisfactory. He took the opportunity to ask for more details about his mom and Kushina, mostly his mom. Both Umbu told him they were a little too young to see the torrid jacket-bursting romance in full but had plenty of gossip from Ibiki Marino. As it turned out, Umbu have lots of waiting, guarding, and dead time, so they gossip like old fishwives about everything that isn't classified and some things that are if it's juicy enough. They motioned Naruto and Sakura over and the children settled under the oak tree for a story, with equal amounts of fascination. Apparently Kushina and Mikoto had been friends for a long time, though Minato did always have a crush on Kushina once he saved her from some mist ninja. However, he was somewhat flighty and wasn't around her for a while because he was so head over heels in love. The war made them stay away, then come together intermittently, where he really tried to woo her. At that, Naruto made a gross face while Sakura let out a squeal only 2 notes off from a tea kettle. Sasuke's face was impassive, of course, so Cat continued the story. Despite herself, Kushina did find herself attracted to him, but also loved Mikoto deeply and wanted to go for the Hokage position. She was willing to fight the Uchiha and the Leaf Elders to keep Mikoto with her. Sakura sighed dreamily. It might not have been the story she'd thought of, but it was indeed romantic. So why did she marry my father, said Sasuke, looking equal parts conflicted and suspicious as he stared at Kat. I'm getting there. Anyway, the Uchiha clan ordered the unification of Fugaku and Mikato's bloodlines to both clamp down on the rumors they thought were scandalous to the clan and to make sure there was another generation of Uchiha. At that point, so many people had died that some of us were worried there wouldn't be enough left to have kids among the clans. Sakura nodded and turned excitedly to Naruto and Sasuke's skeptical faces. I read about this. Maintaining genetic diversity inside a clan while preserving the bloodline traits is really tricky, even with all the medical improvements Princess Tsunade Senja made. Some people marry outside the clan, and some people get told to marry within the clan, even if it's not very romantic. What, so I could have had to marry my sister? That's disgusting, said Sasuke. Sakura shook her head. Nothing like that. The families with children of about the same age would get together and try to set up marriages between people who were genetically viable and who had good personalities. You would have had to marry, she frowned, mapping the relations in her head, a cousin twice removed or something. A stranger, genetically speaking. Hound let out a low whistle of surprise. The kid's smart. Where'd you learn all of this? Sakura blushed, unused to the praise. I started doing research last week by using the Konoha Bloodline Compendium. It had a bunch of useful information. Pretty boring though. All this genetic junk is making me fall asleep. Go back to the story, Kat-san, pleaded Naruto. Fine. Anyway, when the match was announced, Kushina and the Uchiha clan head at the time got into a screaming match while Fugaku and Mikato tried to calm them down. Ultimately, there was nothing she could do and Mikato had to get married anyway. Fugaku took it all in stride though, and that bought him a lot of credit with his new wife. Nobody's sure if Mrs. Uchiha dumped Mrs. Uzumaki or if it was the other way round, but the breakup was pretty dramatic. Talk of the village for days. Naruto looked fascinated while Sasuke was starting to brood, so Kakashi nudged him with a boot and gave him a thumbs up. Sasuke snorted and went back to Kat's story. After the wedding, Kushina ran to Minato to cry into his shoulder over the whole mess. He refused to do anything even when she kissed him, soaking wet from rain and thoroughly miserable. After that, he started wooing her in all sorts of sappy ways and it went from there. Oh come on, burst out Sasuke. How could you possibly know it was raining, or that even any of this happened? I think you're just lying to us for fun. My parents loved each other. They did, I know it. Naruto joined the objection. Well yeah, and there's no way that selfish idiot was my father, she had to have married somebody else. Naruto, you absolute brick, you have blonde spiky hair, the fourth Hokage has blonde spiky hair, are you blind? Seriously Sakura, there's plenty of blonde people in this village. They were just friends and my mom wanted to give her ideas to the Hokage. Gigi said so last week, remember? All that junk about the damn yo-yo not liking girls meant she had to get her ideas to work some other way. Kat-san, what's the truth? They both rounded on Kat, who felt like she'd been pinned under two floodlights and a host of sensory ninja. She held up her hands in protest. I can't really say, honest. She pointed up at a thin man in a mask who'd alighted on top of the Uchiha boundary wall and waved. Oh no, what a shame, time for our shift change. The Umbu agent shunshined out of the space so fast she left a slight ripple of displaced air. Kakashi took his time getting to his feet and stretched. Well, it looks like as the only responsible adult here you read porn in public, called out Mongoose from the wall. Kakashi ignored him. I'll go pick up takeout if you lot get inside before it's fully dark. They scrambled inside as the boys continued to argue about whose mom was in the right, if the fourth Hokage was a selfish busybody or not, and how the Konoha elders were a bunch of tools. Sakura, by contrast, was positively glowing with delight at such a dramatic and tragic love story, thwarted by the whims of fate. Ino would be so jealous she missed this, so now it was Sakura's turn to have juicy secrets. Kakashi grinned behind his mask and vanished in a shunshin of his own. Up on the wall, Kat peeked up and tapped Mongoose's leg. Hey, you got a minute? The thin, hairy Umbu sat, his legs dangling above the koi pond. Go for it, Bat's on the other side of the house doing a perimeter check. Kat flipped up with the ease of a trained gymnast and let out a sigh, but was quiet for a while. They listened to the distant sound of bickering from within the house and watched the moon rise. "Kakashi's getting too close to this one, Goose. Said I could call him by his name around the kids and takes off that mask every chance he gets. I don't like it. It's unprofessional, and I'm only slightly better because I haven't broken down weeping over past tragedies yet." Mongoose scratched at the stubble poking out from his chin. "I'll speak to the Hokage about it, off the record. It's not ideal, but he's been cheerier than I've ever seen him this week, and compared to his usual brooding silences and constant pornography usage, it's a breath of fresh air. I'll take cheery, involved take any day of the week over the Walking Dead man we had before. Besides, I get the feeling Lord Hokage suspected something like this would happen. He was awfully smug when Kakashi accepted the position of question-answerer and face for this OP. If Danzo gets wind, he's going to rake him over the coals, maybe dishonorably discharge him. We don't get this job because we know how to run a daycare. We're ruthless killers, body buriers, and spies, for Kami's sake. Danzo wouldn't notice if Kakashi dyed his hair pink, cat. That's the other good bit of news I wanted to tell you, our mystery Uchiha's woken up. Only years of training stopped Cat from falling off the roof. Kakashi had managed to pay for 2 wilting salads and a collection of meat skewers from his favorite barbecue joint and was taking his time winding through the streets of nighttime Konoha when he felt a hand land on his shoulder. "Wonderful to see you again, my eternal rival." "It's nice to see you too, Guy." Might Guy fell into step alongside him and unsheathed his dazzling grin, and Kakashi found himself smiling in return. "So how have you been spending the springtime of your youth lately, Kakashi?" "I myself have just returned from an arduous mission protecting a caravan in grass country. The villagers were most unyouthfully rude, but I was able to increase my training regimen so it all worked out swimmingly." Kakashi made a non-committal noise through his nose. "Lots of emotion on my latest assignment, but I'll live. Nothing too grim." Guy threw his arm around the other man's shoulders, making Kakashi nearly drop the salads. "My eternal rival, if you ever need assistance from me, you have but to ask. I shall do my best to ensure our spirits remain high, no matter how difficult the mission." His rival elbowed him, which was the equivalent of a polite thank you, so Guy's smile widened even further. "You know, Guy, you just gave me an idea for our next challenge. We each balance one of these salad bowls on our heads and try to see who can make it to the Uchiha compound first without spilling it. If it falls, you have to catch it before it hits the ground." Guy gave him a thumbs up and swiped one of the bowls as Kakashi also handed over roughly half of the meat skewers. "A most worthy exercise, Kakashi. I have missed our challenges so. Ready, set, go." They were off, 2 elite ninjas speeding into the night, cackling like maniacs. Inside its cage, the Kyuubi gorged itself on misery and nightmares. The first was drawn from the very stone and wood around his host, the blood-soaked ground a veritable feast of ill intent for the fox to devour. Betrayal, vengeance, madness, conspiracy, paranoia, oh yes. He could feed here for months, rebuilding his yin chakra, regaining his strength. This time, the boy's nightmares were not in charcoal sketches, but images of a distant battlefield. Wait, he recognized this, the day he'd been closest to breaking free from the Demon Uzumaki. The fox sat up, ears perked as the nightmare spooled out from the view of a nameless ninja as a woman with flowing red hair and sharp teeth slaughtered all in her path. Only once the ground was littered with corpses did she turn to the wounded Uchiha surrounded by feathers and kiss her passionately. The hand that reached out was small, and the voice, young. "Mom, what's going on? Why did you do that? Did you not want us? Mom." The fox's smile was impossibly wide and it laughed, a deep, rolling thing that echoed around its prison and made Naruto Uzumaki roll over in vague discomfort. "Oh, this is rich indeed. Kushina, you love-struck fool." It breathed deeply, inhaling the dream as it dissolved. The Uchiha have such horrible eyes, but such deliciously dark dreams, it almost makes up for Madara's treachery. I will enjoy burning their district to the ground when I get out. It's only a matter of time. Chapter 13, Lie Like Crazy and Pray It Works. Older. The man slept for a long time, nearly a full week as Dr. Ontoba predicted, but the Umbu rotation never faltered. He'd been stripped of clothes by the hospital staff and his ninja weapons had been combed over by Ibiki. Still, even an unarmed ninja was dangerous, especially an Uchiha. Eagle had seen Mikoto Uchiha kill a bandit with her toenails when tied up, once, and the story had made the rounds of Umbu HQ years before. He remembered it now as the man opened his eyes and grumbled something indistinct. Both Umbu in the room instantly tuned to face him, hands hovering over their weapons, but the man merely rolled away from the window and groaned as he went back to sleep. Silently, Eagle reached over and pressed the call button for Dr. Ontoba. Internally, Sasuke knew he needed to get up. He could feel the sunlight on his back through the sheets, just as he could feel the presence of the 4 Umbu Black Ops members around him. 2 were in the room, one standing at attention next to the door outside, and the last somewhere above him, likely on the roof of the hospital. He breathed in deeply, recognizing the antiseptic smell that smothered the earthy scent of Konoha's great trees. Yes, definitely a hospital. However, he'd always been slow to rise in the mornings, save in situations of imminent peril, so Sasuke sat silently beneath the sheets and reviewed what he remembered. Their plan had worked, but they'd been forced to send him instead of Naruto or even Sarada. Because they were both dead. Because he'd failed at the only real responsibility he'd ever been given, to protect his daughter and his. Sasuke pushed those feelings into a tiny box inside his heart and locked it. He needed to think. The Otsutsuki who'd nearly killed him had somehow followed him here, and the Sage of Six Paths had dragged him away, saving Sasuke's life. He'd seen himself, a terrifyingly young version of himself who, despite training and a focus on revenge, still held baby fat in his cheeks and felt fear at the idea of death. Sasuke had told his younger self to find Naruto, but by Amaterasu Okamai, this was going to be confusing. He was going to have to lie a lot, and lie well, to some very smart people very shortly while on painkillers and a light fever. And despite becoming an internationally wanted terrorist, revolutionary, and Konoha's spy master, Sasuke had never been very good at lying to others. He was excellent at lying to himself, but that was a different skill set, wasn't it? The door swung open and Sasuke rolled over to see a middle-aged man in the white scrubs of a doctor, with the black gloves that certified a medicnin, step into the room. He saw the 3rd Umbu agent resume his post outside the door before it closed and shifted in attempt to rise, but the doctor put a hand out. "No need to try moving around just yet, son. You've given me a great deal of work to do just keeping you alive. Don't reopen any of these wounds or you'll bleed to death in the hour." Sasuke raised his only remaining eyebrow to convey skepticism. "Believe me or not, I'm still this hospital's head medicnin, so you'll be cooperative unless you want to start your stint in TNI early. Or if you decide to start talking, things can be a great deal less unpleasant for everyone." Sasuke's mind spun. If he was going to be interrogated that aggressively, he'd need to prioritize information and fast. What could be hidden and what couldn't, what needed to be revealed and what was best kept to himself, who could be trusted, above all. The Yamanaka could leave him a drooling vegetable if they were given free rein even before Ibiki Marino, or whoever was in charge, was unleashed with pliers and a welding torch. Early cooperation was the only thing that could work. He cleared his throat and attempted to speak. "Who is the Hokage of the Hidden Leaf?" The Umbu and the doctor exchanged glances as the latter chuckled slightly. "Normally I'm the one asking mental checklist questions, son. It's Hiruzen Sarutobi, the professor of the Hidden Leaf." Sasuke let out a sigh of relief and winced as he attempted to bring his arm out from the sheets. "Could one of you get me into a sitting position, please? I have much to report to Lord Hokage, and Lord Uchiha." One of the Umbu stepped forward, his body language offended. "We do not jump at your commands, dog. Speak your name and village, before you have the arrogance to give demands to the Umbu Black Ops." The doctor dragged him upright by his shoulders, displaying his name tag. Ontoba, it read. As he was settled into the pillows behind him, Sasuke ran through his blurry, fever-hazed memories of the fight in his mind, or perhaps his younger self's mind. This was going to be a headache and a half. He mentally shrugged. He'd offered his younger self as good a name as any, and depending on how one looked at it, it was even true. "My name is Indra Uchiha. I have not been officially aligned with any village for several years, but I will swear my allegiance to the Uchiha of the Leaf if the village is proven worthy." At this, the Umbu dropped into battle stances as the doctor leaned back from the bed. The Umbu who had spoken before half drew a sword before a hand from the other stopped him. You lie. The Uchiha were wiped out last year by one of their own. There are none left. What? Sasuke let the shock show plainly on his face, though it wasn't for the reasons they thought. To have arrived so early, but not nearly early enough, it was the height of ironies. He'd arrived too late to save the clan and too early to make the changes he'd need to, in order to save the 5 great nations. The prospect of years spent on the run, seeking out Itachi, trying to convince Obito, to hunt down Orochimaru, Zetsu, and Kami knew what else. He had so much time, but he was brought back to reality by the doctor's fingers snapping in front of his nose. Indra shook his head and looked back at the Umbu, who'd sheathed his sword, but kept his hand on the hilt. I need to know everything, Monkey-san. What date is it, what year, how long Itachi Uchiha's been gone from the village, and anything else related to this monstrosity. He stressed the last word, hoping to compel the recalcitrant Umbu into action, but none of them moved. Instead the glares from behind the masks intensified. How do you know Itachi Uchiha? Did you help him kill your own clan? Sasuke shook his head, racking his brain. Lie, lie, lie. I was tracking another, a rogue Uchiha long thought dead by the village and the clan. Deep breath, a first blind step. Obito Uchiha wears a spiral mask and black robes. I saw Itachi conversing with him and trailed the former. Both found me, we fought, and he gestured at his body, clearly lost. He glared. Now are you going to get me someone cleared to debrief me, or am I going to have to crawl to the Hokage Tower myself? Did you listen to a word I said? Bellowed Ontoba. You're strictly confined to this bed until your wounds heal. Konoha's blood, have you realized you lost an eye? Sasuke moved his hand up, only for Ontoba's hand to grab his arm with surprising force, pushing it back to the bed. Don't even think about it, son. You've got a fever and I narrowly managed to keep your ocular nervous system from getting infected. It's a miracle you're still alive anyway. You've been out for almost a week, and by all rights should still be asleep. Sasuke wavered. I've been out for a week. Yes, and any more outbursts like this could push you right back down. I had to tie off your subclavian artery, reinforce your celiac trunk, and remove foreign chakra from your system in addition to patching your left kidney. A fever is the least of your worries, and if you try anything stupid like climb out of bed, you'll reopen both the internal and external wounds I managed to close off. Ontoba pierced Sasuke with a gaze as sharp as Sakura's own. So you will not be leaving this bed or my care until I say so, even if they have to wheel Tni and hear one jonin at a time. Are we clear? Sasuke swallowed and forcibly pushed away a memory of Sakura making a similar speech to him as he lay in the Konoha hospital with a missing arm. Her face narrowed in fury. Yes sir. Crystal clear sir. Dr. Ontoba nodded. Good. Then my time with you is over for today. You seem mentally sound and respond to stimuli. These fine men and women no doubt have far more pressing questions. He left silently, but as soon as the door closed, the two Umbu erupted into a flood of questions. Why are you not loyal to Konoha village? How did you discover Obito Uchiha is supposedly alive? Did you aid Itachi last year? Who else knows of your existence? What is your relationship to the Uchiha clan? Have you ever had dealings with Orochimaru of the Sunin? Sasuke held up his hand, abandoning the effort to raise it to shoulder level after a deep throbbing pain tore through his pectoral muscle. He decided to gamble again. I am only cleared to discuss my mission with Sarutobi Hiruzen and Danzo Shimura of the Foundation. He looked around. Monkey, the one who had bristled at him, now took a step back before pressing in once more, both hands clenching on the sheets. More lies. And poor ones at that. As I said, what is your relationship to the Uchiha clan? Sasuke did not answer, but instead directed a trickle of chakra to his eye, causing it to flash red, before the entire left side of his face felt like it had been set on fire and he cut off the flow instantly with a cry of pain. Eagle and the other Umbu, Monkey, judging by the mask, leapt back in shock. As I said, my name is Indra Uchiha. The photographic memory the Sharingan provided him meant Sasuke could see the Uchiha clan lineage scroll in front of him plain as day. Time to add a branch or two. I am a member of the Uchiha clan by blood and by ritual, though I was never entered into the scrolls. He allowed the silence to build before continuing. I am the illegitimate son of Fugaku Uchiha, leader of the clan. Lord Danzo can tell you more. He allowed himself a small smile. Time to let the old bastard sweat, because the moment he left this bed, the leader of Root was a dead man. Tell him, his arm will be restored, just as he asked. Now, will one of you go find the Hokage, the head Jonin, or someone with brains and a working pair of arms? I'm exhausted, running a fever, and don't want to forget anything. Sasuke closed his eyes as Monkey and Eagle had what was no doubt a furious conversation in Umbu sign language above his head. Normally he would have followed it easily, but he needed to prepare. Ironic, that he'd prepare for a Yamanaka mind interrogation by using a Yamanaka technique, but there it was. Designed to enable ninja to assume false identities, the hidden mind jutsu allowed the user to compartmentalize their experiences and personality behind another false one. He'd used it once to infiltrate a Land of Wind townhouse and become the life of the party, despite his own introverted nature. The intelligence gathered had been well worth the massive headache the next morning, but the jutsu was only designed to operate for short periods of time. More in-depth sessions would be required for long-term operations, and this time-traveling catastrophe of an operation was going to be very long indeed. At least the language would be the same, but this was going to be tricky. My name is Sasuke Uchiha of the Leaf. I am pretending to be Indra Uchiha the Wanderer. My name is Sasuke Uchiha of the Leaf. I am pretending to be Indra Uchiha the Wanderer. My name is Indra Uchiha of the Leaf. I am pretending to be Sasuke Uchiha the Wanderer. My name is Indra Uchiha the Wanderer. I was pretending to be Sasuke Uchiha of the Leaf. My name is Indra Uchiha. Indra opened his eyes. Indra had been a wandering mercenary, then the Uchiha's unacknowledged bloodline guardian for 20 years, since his 7th birthday found him estranged from the Leaf and from the Uchiha clan. Ignored and shunned as a bastard by a clan too busy with the Third Great Ninja War, he'd lived a nomadic life across the Land of Fire, encountering a cheerful, good-natured Uzumaki who'd raised him, told him of the Leaf and his clan, even as he inspired in Indra a distrust of the village system and the failures that had led to the destruction of Uzushio. They had been set upon by both Mist Hunter Nin and the Uzumaki had died to save him. The slaughter had awakened his Sharingan and started a pattern of a wandering Indra drawn into some local conflict, only to flee as those close to him died. Indra had returned to the Leaf in secret and was given the position of bloodline guardian to keep him out of the way, before he resumed his wandering. Then, word began to reach him of a troublesome Uchiha who kept showing up in mist and rain. From there, Indra kept his story simple, weaving in Sasuke's memories of conflict with Itachi in the Uchiha hideout with conflict with Obito and Taka. After some thought, he allowed his memories of cackling madness to stay. He needed an excuse to possess the Mangekyou Sharingan and the village elders didn't have to know it was eternal, now did they? The Uchiha had kept their secrets well and now that a young Sasuke was the only one left, the story of Indra's future seeing eye, now destroyed, left him plenty of reason to outline the threats to come. He allowed flickers of the Fourth World War, the Juobi, Kaguya, and the rest of the Dematsutsuki to remain. He saw Sarada, Karin, Sakura, and Naruto pinned by white arrows to the seal even as they poured chakra into it, saw his daughter curse him even as she cast him beyond anything even resembling sanity and space with the jutsu, with the love and hope that had been meant for Naruto, who had always been better than him, more worthy, someone who shone like the sun and... He realized he was crying and that the room was silent around him. Eagle was gone and Monkey was glaring through his mask to reveal a blank-eyed stare and a raised kunao. Those tears are proof you are not of Root. The simmering anger and contempt from before was gone as if it had never existed. The man was a blank slate. Despite himself, Indra shivered and told himself the hospital's air conditioning had just kicked on. You are a liar, likely an enemy ninja, and a threat to both Lord Danzo and Konoha. You should be eliminated before you can harm him. I can say you tried to kill me. Indra shook his head and wiped the tears away even as the small smile returned to his face. I am not of Root originally, but move in the same circles. He cocked his head to the side. You thought the Uchiha had no ways to police their own? That they had no methods of hunting down those who would attempt to steal our bloodline's secrets? Shimura Danzo courts disaster in violating those oaths, if he has not done so already. All the more reason I should kill you, to protect Lord Danzo, to keep Konoha strong. The man stabbed the kunai down at Indra's chest, only for the man to kick out, sending the sheets up to entangle his legs and Monkey's arm. The root agent drew another kunai with his free hand, which Indra ignored in favor of head-butting the man as hard as possible. If he'd been healthier, the root agent wouldn't have even been able to attack, paralyzed by Genjutsu. If he'd had both eyes, he could have been flung against the wall by the powers of the Rinnegan, or the skeletal armor of the Susanoo. He could have switched positions with a space-time ninjutsu and stabbed the man himself. But even half-blind, weakened, missing an arm, and feverish, Indra Uchiha was a gifted shinobi. Not now. He thought as the man schemed the second kunai past his ear. I've lost too much to be stopped now. Indra screamed in determination as he delivered a second headbutt that cracked the man's mask, possibly his nose, and sent him sprawling backwards onto the tile. He realized even that short exertion had cost him. 2 spots on the bandages covering his torso were already darkening with blood, and he felt lightheaded already. The headbutt hadn't helped his condition, to be sure. Reaching across, he pressed the button to summon Dr. Ontoba once more. The Hokage, as a rule, did not run anywhere except on the battlefield. A Hokage was a symbol of the village, and to see the personification of the village's strength and wisdom running, limping, or doing anything to suggest weakness was to invite swift messenger hawks to other cage and pointed border incursions. Usually cloud incursions, but on this day Sarutobi could not have cared less. He and Counselor Danzo moved behind Eagle in a manner that was certainly not a run, but not the dignified stride or ceremonial stroll of a Hokage either. Privately, Hiruzen conceded it might have been power walking. The news that their mysterious Uchiha intruder was awake had sent both the Hokage's office and the Jonin standby station into a frenzy of activity. Ibiki had been in the latter, of course, and his summons was practically an alarm bell for every Jonin in the building to reach out to their friends in Umbu to begin pestering them for every scrap of information. Hiruzen and Danzo reached the hospital and strode through the doors like men 30 years younger than they were, even as they both felt their leg muscles strain slightly from the movement. They could have simply used chakra, but at their age, with the potential for a violent Uchiha to be at the end of the road, both thought it best to hold back. The Hokage cleared his throat meaningfully at the nurse. "I'd like to speak with Dr. Ontoba about the gentleman who was brought in last week." The nurse nodded. "Of course, right this way, Lord Hokage. You'll find him in the patient's room." Apparently there was an incident. As they entered the elevator, both men sighed. Danzo pinched his nose. Incident could mean any number of things, from an awake but frightened Uchiha to a raving med lunatic holding the doctor hostage with his own stethoscope. "Sarutobi, do you really think it was wise to place him in the civilian hospital rather than straight into Marino's hands?" "I'd like information straight from him first," replied the Hokage shortly. "And he'll be less likely to be honest if he wakes up in a cell instead of somewhere where he can see the tree leaves and sounds of the village. Occasionally civility and intelligence gathering coincide, old friend." Danzo tapped his own covered socket. "Not in my experience." "Well, who knows, perhaps you and this young man will get along. You're both missing an eye and you both seem to be pains in my back this week." Now Danzo was grinning too. "Hopefully I still have a more dignified entrance." The doors opened and Hiruzen let him have the last word. The floor wasn't deserted, but the Umbu staring at them from the other end of the hall made it plain the other patients and nurses could have been invisible for all the notice the two elders paid them. Spider had simply gone in through the third-floor window, but his voice did not radiate confidence. "My lords, I'm afraid there's been a disturbance inside. He indicated you could enter, but... well, you'll see." Danzo entered the room first, hands ready to wield his cane in a defensive formation, but there was no need. "Excellent, Counselor Danzo and Lord Hokage," said Indra Uchiha, who had Monkey's head lodged firmly between his thighs in a chokehold. "Now I can finally release this idiot." Chapter 14, Interrogation, PT1. Monkey collapsed to the floor, gasping and clutching at his neck, which was starting to gain some nasty bruises, but Danzo only spared him the briefest of glances. The Umbu agent collected his discarded kunai and dignity, slipping back to the door as Spider entered. "Mind telling me how a one-armed, one-eyed, invalid got the drop on you? I think we'd all like to hear that." The Hokage's voice was deep, stern, and brooked no argument. Indra Uchiha spoke first. I offered an explanation for my appearance in the village and this honorable Umbu agent did not believe me. When I requested for Lord Danzo to debrief me, he took it as a threat and attacked. The man waggled his toes and attempted to pull the sheets back towards his arm, with little success. I was able to subdue him without harm to either of us and we decided to wait for the closest authority figure to resolve our dispute. The Hokage nodded. Were you in fact threatening Lord Danzo, whom, to the best of my knowledge, has never mentioned you nor possessed any knowledge of your existence? Not yet, Hokage-sama. As I explained to Monkey-kun over there, he accentuated the name with deep sarcasm. I knew of his organization route, which seeks to ensure the survival and strategic dominance of the Leaf, for it is similar to my own position within the Uchiha clan. A silent guardian. A watchful protector of the clan. An avenging dark knight, if you will. He looked smugly at Danzo and his eyes flickered red for an instant as both older men ducked their heads. You would dare dash, roared Danzo. I merely meant to illustrate the veracity of my claims, my lords, protested the man, who was now being held in the air by Hiruzen's clenched fist around his hospital gown. I plead my innocence and ask merely to tell my story. You claim a great deal while attacking my Umbu and my counselor, stated the Hokage. A more prudent man, or a man who wished to keep his head, would be more circumspect in his actions. Especially one who has yet to even say his name. On this, Hokage-sama, we can agree. My name is Indra Uchiha, bastard son of Fugaku Uchiha, lord of the clan. I accepted dash. He broke off as the strings holding the back of his hospital gown finally gave way and he fell back to the bed with a cry of pain. The Hokage released his grip on the garment and the one-armed Uchiha covered himself. Apologies for the indecency, lord. The apology is mine, murmured Hiruzen. Please, continue. I had been stricken from the clan records due to my father's indiscretions with a captured Cloudnin, and Fugaku never knew of my existence until much later. Rather than cause a scandal, he granted me the position of Dragon Scale, the bloodline guardian position long considered defunct by most of the clan. I was to seek out those who were traitors to the clan, those whose bodies had long been unrecovered, and preserve or destroy the secrets of our bloodline they carried within them. The Hokage nodded. Fugaku had been a proud man as well as extremely prolific in his younger years. He was part of the reason the Uchiha clan's numbers had not dwindled to nothing during the Third Ninja War, and a son from the Land of Lightning with such a history would have caused a diplomatic crisis just when the fourth Hokage had decided to put his weight behind Konoha's negotiations with Cloud. Yes, he could see Fugaku's reasoning. A dangerous, unacknowledged posting for a dangerous, unacknowledged son. I had been wandering the 5 nations before then and resumed my position after. I found many false leads and many illegal dealings, which I burnt down on my own. That seems unlikely, interjected Danzo. If there had been a wandering Uchiha back then, we would have heard about you. Give an example, a mission you completed to check our records. Indra paused and the Hokage's gaze roved over his bandaged form. Young, from what he could see of the man's face. Self-confident, perhaps arrogant, as many Uchiha had been. But not yet. The flippancy hid something else, some deep grief recently ripped open. The first words out of the man's mouth had been his clan name, which indicated a deep loyalty, or a deep obsession. The Leaf Village histories had many stories of fratricide among the Uchiha. The Battle of Hojiki Pass, leading into Hot Springs country. The man's voice was confident, reciting as if from memory. I had been traveling with several mercenaries and samurai from the Land of Iron, hunting a group of bandits who, it was whispered, had a missing nin in their ranks. I had also heard Kakashi of the Sharinan had been sent on a rival contract from the Land of Fire to hunt the same prey and resolved to meet both objectives at once. Heitake Kakashi is a valued ninja of the Leaf, said the Hokage. His loyalty to the village is beyond question and the Uchiha clan themselves allowed him to retain his Sharinan. For what reason then, did you seek him out? Indra raised his shoulders in a shrug. I was curious, young, excited. I wished to continue following these samurai and wanted to see someone else like me. Danzo spoke up, from where he had sat under the window. There were plenty of Uchiha in the village, you could have returned at any time. There were dozens of others like you. One who bears the Sharinan but who is not, officially, of the clan. One who is looked upon with suspicion and awe in equal measure. One who is seeking the answers to their existence as they strive to protect the leaf. Indra's level gaze met the counselor's. I suspect you two share many of these fine qualities. Danzo shifted his hold on his cane and Indra's hand clenched on top of the hospital gown bunched in his lap. Gentlemen, barked the Hokage. I will not have any further foolishness in this hospital. Let me remind you it is a death sentence to bear steel in front of your Hokage. Indra's gaze switched to Hiruzen. You are not my Hokage. He spat with real venom. My Hokage, my daughter, my people, they're all dead and gone, and I am here to stop the slaughter before it escalates further. It should have been either of them, but they had to send me and now I'm stuck in this damn bed while two crazed Uchiha are out there, plotting to destroy the planet. There was silence as Indra reined in his breath and the elders analyzed his words. Surprisingly Danzo spoke first. Finish your story. What did you think of Hatake Kakashi? At this, a new light entered Indra's eyes, as he clearly forced away whatever dark thoughts his little speech had prompted. Hatake Kakashi, a fond grin spread across his face. There's no one like him. He was, rather, an impressive ninja. We'd reached the bandit camp first, but he went through the two stone Chunin like they were nothing. Used some custom lightning-style jutsu I'd never seen before, and it made me jealous. I always wanted to learn more from him, to hear his stories. He certainly fought like an Uchiha, no. Like one of the Kage. He spoke the last sentence as if it was the highest honor he could bestow upon someone. Hiruzen's eyebrows rose. A high assessment from seeing a man fight only once. As he still has it, I'm guessing you did not try and take his Sharingan back. Indra nodded seriously, though he'd never mentioned the secondary goal, but everyone in the room knew it had been on his mind. No. He had earned it. However, his face darkened into a scowl and the lights flickered as the electricity in the room reacted to his spiking chakra. It turns out his donor, Obito Uchiha, has relinquished any right to carry the Sharingan for his actions after Konobe Bridge. After Konobe Bridge, echoed Hiruzen. He died in a rockfall caused by stone reinforcements. The fourth Hokage confirmed his death. Lord Danzo, said Indra, what is the fifth rule of special operations? If there is no body, there is no confirmed kill, recited the counselor. Are you suggesting that a 10-year-old boy survived an earth devastation jutsu performed by a dozen skilled Chunin? If it can be called surviving. Indra's voice was flat, but they could hear the recrimination in it. He was found by Madara Uchiha, the scion of our clan, now ancient and fully mad, so the fool imprinted upon the desperate Obito his plans for all the tailed beasts. He would see the entire ninja system burnt to the ground to spite Hashirama and to prove the superiority of his philosophy. He died soon after, but left plans for resurrection. I have been hunting Obito ever since. The elders were silent as they digested this information, and Indra let them be, checking each of his wounds with his fingers. They had at least stopped visibly bleeding through the bandages. Danzo leaned forward, both hands cupped on the head of his cane. How is it that you discovered this, if I am to credit your story with any shred of credibility? Indra tapped the side of his face swathed in bandages. I awakened the Mangekyou Sharingan some time ago. Despite all their generations, all the blood spilled in seeking it, even the Uchiha cannot predict its manifestation, or what form it will take. Only that gaining it is, his mouth twisted in disgust and sorrow, unpleasant. One of my Sharingan gained the ability to see the future, though not at my own discretion. It would show me many things, often far from me in distance and in time. I saw men I had yet to meet die at my hand, while others spoke of secret pacts in tea houses. Many powerful secrets that had not become secrets, or even could come to pass. For a time, I went mad. The man groaned, as if the loss of rational thought was a disappointing song on the radio. I returned to myself when a dear friend brought me back by force. He smiled, remembering, it was an exceedingly violent reunion, but I am grateful for it. One of the Uzumaki, another clan brought to ruin by Konoha's inaction. This is something of a pattern with you Lord Hokage, isn't it? It took every ounce of his considerable willpower for Danzo to not react. The sheer cast iron balls of this man. Clearly not a man who would be welcome in Root itself, but oh the possibilities. The Hokage continued to stand stiffly at the head of Indra's bed, though his knees had to be killing him. Privately, Danzo admitted that such posturing when he could have sat only contributed to his perceived weakness among the cage. A sentimental fool willing to swallow any insult for the sake of peace, as the leaf grew weaker. Indra had continued. I return home to discover my friend dead, my daughter impaled by a monstrosity, and the man who started it all chatting casually with the very man who your Umbu says slaughtered the rest of the Uchiha. His voice rose to a snarl of rage. So tell me, Hiruzen, why should I believe you when you promise safety to clans that have a tendency to keep dying on you? I rush back to this village, my only hope that I am in time to prevent catastrophe, and find it has already come among my people like a wolf among sheep. You failed them, the leaf failed them, my father failed them, while a 13-year-old child killer and a mad runaway slaughtered one of the founding clans of Konoha. Blood of the sage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. I should be demanding answers from you. Danzo watched closely as the Hokage sputtered and stammered his denials. The man's anger was real, but not dangerously so. This was the frustration of a man unable to save those he had sworn to protect. He's not only angry at Hiruzen, but rather, at himself. Another lever upon which to influence this volatile Uchiha, excellent. Was it one of these Uchiha who attacked you before you crash-landed among our academy students? What did they do to you? Indra shook his head, drawing a shaky breath as he composed himself, hand absently tying his hospital gown back on. Danzo, a fellow invalid, noticed. So he's been missing the arm for a good spell. No, something Obito brought to this land through his madness, malice, and ignorance. Older by far than the Uchiha or the Senju. I've seen them before in the future, with my eye. They aren't here yet, but if we don't act, they will come. Speak plainly, demanded Danzo, pounding his cane into the linoleum. Timetables, personnel, supplies. Indra shrugged. There will be 20 of them, but they have not seen our little world yet. They come from somewhere far beyond the 5 great nations and the petty squabbles of villages. I would let you see, if you could trust my telling to be true. He tapped his eye to indicate genjutsu. A florid turn of phrase from a former mercenary. They only come when they sense the divine tree or the rabbit goddess of legend. Both are their targets, for they desire vast stores of chakra above all else. Both Danzo and Hiruzen stared. Indra was staring off into the distance, no longer speaking to them. His single eye was flickering, red, black, red, black. They seek the tailed beasts and their containers, as vessels for the power of a beast from beyond sanity itself. The rabbit goddess lost her gamble and became the 10 tails. Her sons sealed both into the very moon above us and sought to atone for her sins. The sage took the one who followed me, but there may be others. I pray not, for this world, these ninja, are not ready. There is so much I need to do. The hawk, the raccoon, the whirlpool, the white snake, so much to do. I have years, but it's not enough time. He began to laugh, a weak, broken sound. Sarada, Uzumaki, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't give you more time. You should be here, not me. I'm not the person to deal with this. The Hokage's hand landed on his shoulder firmly, with a sharp clap. The noise and the sensation appeared to draw the wounded Uchiha out of whatever fugue he'd been in. He looked up and blinked in surprise. Higoromo-san. The Hokage did not reply, but patted his shoulder. Indra kept talking. I don't know if I can go through this again. Indra, the Hokage's voice was calm and some measure of his strength passed through to the Uchiha. What is it you desire? Death or penance? The question hung in the air, full of terrible potential until... Penance. He whispered quietly. I want to fix my mistakes with the will of fire Hashirama-san spoke of. Why do you think there is no way back for you, son? I've done so many bad things, hurt my friends, my family. I left my daughter to protect the ninja world and now she's dash. Have the bad things you've done harmed the hidden leaf? A quiet yes prompted the Hokage and Danzo to exchange a look and a series of umbu hand signs behind his back. Who is your loyalty to, then, if not the leaf? Iron, sand. No, no. Burst Indra. My loyalty is not to the leaf, but its people, whom I love even if I failed them, especially if I failed them. The Hokage squeezed Indra's shoulder slightly and let go, which prompted the man to collapse back among the sheets and hospital gown in exhaustion. That last confession had drained him and the two men took their leave, followed by Monkey and Eagle. Crane said the Hokage to the Umbu at the door. "Get that Uchiha back into bed and call the nurse, he needs those wounds looked at again." Crane nodded and entered the room. "So, you believe him?" asked Danzo as the entourage packed into the elevator. "Partially," admitted Hiruzen. "Much of what he said makes sense. His account of the Hojiki Pass matches with the mission report. There were several mercenaries among the samurai Hatake encountered, he could easily have been one. Furthermore, his description of Obito Uchiha matches the fourth Hokage's description of the masked man who attacked Kushina and summoned the Nine Tails. His Sharingan and his memory, if what he says is true, would be a powerful ability to have for the village." "If it's true," reminded the counselor. "Yes. I'd like a Yamanaka to take a look at him before the week is out. Ideally tomorrow. Give him less time to build a cover story, lets us go into details." "Do you want me to?" Danzo tapped his eye and the Hokage shuddered. "No thank you." He was already mentally unstable, showing him that would push him over the deep end. He admitted he was the Uchiha clan's bloodline enforcer, remember? "All the Dem Uchiha were mentally unstable," sighed Danzo. "Just as Tobirama-sensei predicted. Now there's a man who had foresight." They left the hospital and walked in silence across the busy streets, the Hokage nodding to occasional passing ninja. He was right though. About the clans. Uzushio fell when I was a newly minted teenage Hokage and the Uzumaki have been scattered across the 5 great nations, the Tsuchigumo fled when we withdrew our protection, the last Senju is on the run from us and gambling debts dash. I still think you should let me bring her in. Let me finish Danzo. The counselor looked slightly guilty but nodded. So, the Senju are really gone and now, so are the Uchiha. You know I respect your positions Danzo, but the Leaf Village needs a success story, rather than a series of mitigated failures. One man or woman does not a clan make. So, you wish to keep this Indra, if possible? The Hokage nodded. If he proves trustworthy. Imagine Sasuke's face when someone tells him he has a blood relative who didn't kill his parents in front of him. Your standards for ninja get lower and lower every year Hiruzen. The Hokage blinked. Was that a joke, Danzo? The man covered in bandages turned to meet his gaze. I am known to joke, occasionally. On special occasions, only after drinking a bottle of sake. You're making me sound humorless and dour. Well, we're both old men aren't we? The Hokage and his counselor moved off, each with their own plans for the Uchiha currently complaining about hospital food. Chapter 15, Interrogation PT2, Maneuvering for Position Inside Your Head. As the door closed behind Dr. Ontoba once more, Indra let out a sigh of relief and let the walls of his mind fall. My name is Sasuke Uchiha of the Hidden Leaf. I am no longer pretending to be Indra Uchiha. That had been too close by half, and it had been entirely his own fault. Of course he invited Sarutobi Hiruzen and Shimura Danzo. The two people most likely to make him lose control. One was an infrequent father figure in the void of years before Sasuke had graduated from the academy and been assigned to Team 7. The old man had come by with pathetic attempts at conversation and small gifts alongside the paperwork. Some people would have said that some contact was better than nothing. Sasuke just thought the third felt guilty and was assuaging it through the last Uchiha still in the village. Not that Danzo was much better. Actually, scratch that, he was worse. Sasuke began to turn his scattered thoughts to what he'd babbled while they'd been listening. He'd fallen asleep for a second there, or perhaps Indra himself had possessed him to utter a warning to the Hokage, maybe it was simply the ramblings of a mind exhausted by all it had seen. Sasuke didn't care. He just felt tired. There was so much to do and he couldn't decide which was most important. Find Obito and chop his infuriatingly intangible head off? Yes, that was high on the list. Pain had plans, but only Obito's carried the terrible potential of Kaguya Reborn, which would in turn draw the attention of the Otsutsuki clan. Unless they were going to come anyway. In his first life, and by the gods wasn't that a fucked up thing to think? In his first life he'd spent a great deal of time in the mountain's graveyard, as well as over the border of Wind Country, studying the few Atsutsuki structures and glyphs Kaguya had left before her sons had sealed her into the Demmed Moon. And there was another problem, now that he thought of it. Uchiha Sasuke, one of the greatest ninja of his age, had lost his Demmed Rinnegan. He couldn't remember the full text of the Uchiha stone tablet, just the portions his Sharingan had memorized. And that had admittedly been tainted by Black Zetsu anyway. More worries. Black Zetsu, or Akimaru, the time-space jutsu lurking under Izashiagakuer that could either provide another last-minute saving throw for the ninja world, or a method of unparalleled destruction. What should he pursue first? Who should he talk to? Obviously, the most important person. Me. I should talk to myself. Sasuke allowed another smile to cross his lips as he looked up from his lemon jello. Excuse me, Crane-san. I was wondering if you could send a message for me. Crane approached. True to his name, he was long and wiry with muscle, but his dark brown hair tucked into a ponytail stood sharply against the porcelain of the Crane mask. Perhaps. Depends who it's to and what it says. Could you ask that other Uchiha kid to come see me when he has the chance? I'm afraid I landed on him rather harshly last week and never did get the chance to apologize. Crane's silence spoke volumes about how unlikely that meeting was, but what he said was, "I'll see what I can do." Sasuke nodded gratefully and leaned back into his pillows. He remembered Kakashi's advice from decades before while he and Naruto had been lying there in Wave Country on the verge of chakra exhaustion. Remember kids, don't forget to stop fighting one war before you start the next one. Good advice. I'll just go back to sleep. The meeting that evening with the council was considerably smaller than the dozens of Jonin, Umbu, and clan heads that had been in front of the Hokage the week before. Now it was simply the ancient counselors, Hiruzen himself, Shikaku as the Jonin commander, and Inoichi as the head of torture and interrogation. Hiruzen had opened and now Danzo was finishing his own assessment of the mysterious Indra Uchiha. The man admitted he went temporarily insane but made no mention of relapses. However, in his attempt to show us his Sharingan as proof of his bloodline, the emotional stress of the questioning caused Indra to enter in. The counselor hesitated. An altered state. Lord Hiruzen believes this to be true prophecy, as it is vague, threatening, but mostly confusing, as prophecies often are. I believe it was indeed a warning, but this man's psyche is deeply fractured. He may be attempting to warn us of himself, of things he's seen, or what he's done in the past. He admitted to harming the Leaf's interests in the past, which as a mercenary and bloodline enforcer is not surprising. He may have killed Konohana or interfered in missions we had been contracted to complete. Lord Hiruzen believes his desire for penance is genuine, as do I, but there may be other motives we cannot guess at. Lord Hokage and I are in agreement on the use of a Yamanaka interrogation as soon as possible, to give him less time to concoct believable lies. We would hear your thoughts. The old man sat back and crossed his hands over his cane once more as Inoichi rose. What you ask is dangerous, Lord Danzo. An unstable mind, a sick mind, separately we can navigate these, but combined, they pose a distinct threat to the interrogator. We could become lost inside this Indra's mind, caught in a logic loop or a fever dream. It is not a job I could in good conscience delegate to a less experienced member of the clan, and thus we would possibly lose a highly valuable ninja. But we stand to gain a highly valuable ninja as well, pointed out Counselor Hotaru. Even exhausted and severely wounded, he was able to subdue an Umbu agent with only his legs. Couple that with his supposed Sharingan abilities, and the Leaf would have a distinct advantage on a tactical and strategic level. Assuming we cannot simply take his Sharingan ourselves, said Danzo, but the Hokage shook his head. I acquiesced to your usage of Shisui Uchiha's eye after the fact and at great cost, my friend. I cannot in good conscience let another Uchiha lose their eye in such a manner. On a more practical level, we don't know if his future sight emanates from the eye at all. The eye may trigger it, but the ability may be unique to his brain. That would explain the mental instability, mused Hotaru. All the Uchiha have been unstable, how is that even a question? Irrelevant, cut in Shikaku Nara. My comrade's point remains. Should his mind be probed, and soon? There were nods all around the table, but only Counselor Biwako spoke. We appreciate your caution, Yamanaka-san, but we must know more. What this man has said is simply not trustworthy. Then I'll perform the procedure myself. Shikaku shot him a look, but the Yamanaka was immovable. If anyone can navigate such a mind and extract information, it will be me. I can be ready in 10 minutes, but will need to be on site. The Hokage looked grave. As you wish, Inoichi. We'll begin in 15, report to Konoha Hospital. They'd been masking their chakra and their footsteps, so Sasuke was jolted from his sleep by the sound of the opening door. The Hokage entered first, robes and all, followed by his previous Umbu, Crane, and Spider. The moment Sasuke saw the blonde hair, he began frantically chanting inside his head. My name is Sasuke Uchiha of the Leaf. I am pretending to be Indra Uchiha the Wanderer. My name is Sasuke Uchiha of the Leaf. I am pretending to be Indra Uchiha the Wanderer. My name is Indra Uchiha of. He was cut off as the Yamanaka locked eyes with him and instantly slapped him across the face. The shock broke the mental refrain and the constructed personality of Indra Uchiha shattered like glass. He was attempting a mind construct, Lord Hokage. Inoichi's voice was hard and uncompromising. The SCM muscle of the neck tenses during such an exercise. I had to break the construction chain. The Hokage shot Sasuke a hard, unforgiving glare, and Sasuke nodded his head miserably. He'd been caught out and had to play the hand he'd been dealt. And he was only a middling poker player compared to the two shinobi opposite him. He swallowed and spoke. There are certain memories I would prefer you not pry into. I will decide that, Indra Uchiha, if that's who you are. Sasuke raised his gaze evenly, which belied the storm of emotions inside of him. Take a look then. Inoichi bent to lock eyes with Sasuke and placed his call-used hands on his dark hair. Sasuke felt a pulse of chakra and the hospital room exploded into stars. He opened his eyes, both of them, he noticed, and still saw stars. He was standing on top of a mountain, carved flat by the endless passage of wind and time. Just a few meters below, far above the snow line, there were somehow trees. Sasuke could make out a vast dark lake below in the light of the moon, but the shadows were many and his vision uncertain. He hesitantly reached up to prod at his other eye, which did indeed blink and follow his finger. He hastily rearranged his hair to hide it as Inoichi Yamanaka materialized next to him out of a spray of snow particles. Both men were clad in heavy cloaks, though Sasuke's was still a dark blue to Inoichi's black interrogation trenchcoat. The interrogator looked at him, appraising the man before the surroundings. Sasuke held up his arm in the universal gesture for surrender. I meant what I said, Captain. I'll show you what you need to know. Inoichi nodded, but his hand never left the space just above his shuriken pouch, even as his eyes roved over the landscape. You have a beautiful mind, Indra Uchiha. The moon shivered above them, but Inoichi paid it no mind. Thank you. Privately, Sasuke was confused. He'd expected to arrive in the endless water, now he had to walk all the way down a mountain with the too curious for his own good Yamanaka, who was also the clan head. Once again, he felt way out of his depth, though his face betrayed nothing. He gestured and Inoichi followed him down the mountain. My name is Indra Uchiha, bastard son of Fugaku Uchiha, lord of the clan. I knew my clan only briefly before I was forced to leave it behind. Sasuke concentrated and an image floated up of a tall imposing man in Uchiha robes, standing in front of a kneeling Indra. The vast fire behind the man hit his face, but his short brown hair was clear. He had combined the memories of his first meeting with Orochimaru and his memories of the Uchiha family shrine, praying silently that the image was not an obvious fake, but Inoichi did not react. I had been stricken from the clan records due to my father's indiscretions with a captured Cloudnin, and before I arrived in secret to the Leaf Village he never knew of my existence. Rather than cause a scandal, Lord Fugaku granted me the position of Dragon Scale, the bloodline guardian position long considered defunct by most of the clan. I was to seek out those who were traitors to the clan, those whose bodies had long been unrecovered, and preserve or destroy the secrets of our bloodline they carried within them. The image changed to show Indra, a composite of his younger self, but with Madara's long hair, racing across the landscape of the land of grass, then the land of iron. The fake Indra knelt before a younger Mifune and received a sword. The one Sasuke knew in reality had been returned to him by the Lord of the Samurai as a gift many years after the Hokage summit. Inoichi narrowed his eyes and reached out into the image. Catching hold of something, he tugged and the scene peeled away to reveal Sasuke in deep purple, carving his way through samurai as the members of Taka followed him in dark cloaks. Do not lie to me, Indra Uchiha. You cannot. Not in here. Sasuke could feel the memory expand and deepen until it played out in front of them in the sky itself. He could feel the warm splash of blood against his face and hear the screams as samurai writhed under Amaterasu's black flames. A fast explosion on the far wall as the rakeage of the cloud, propelled himself towards the composite Indra. It was the only portion of the memory that was false, but Sasuke had taken his teacher's advice to heart long ago. A true ninja must learn to look underneath the underneath. Well, now he was trying to bury the truth underneath the underneath of the underneath just as much as Inoichi was trying to dig it up. The memory paused as Inoichi walked forward, circling around the frozen You took on the cage of the land of lightning and survived. Sasuke grimaced. I ran. He stitched together the sequence of events, omitting the portion where A sacrificed his arm to break Sasuke's sternum into rubble. Too many questions, but the resulting melee of combat and the ghostly form of the Susanoo gave Inoichi enough to look at. The blonde paused the memory again and Sasuke grimaced as his own memory construction nearly fell from his mental fingertips, but he retained control. The image wavered imperceptibly and held. What is this technique you are using? This chakra warrior around you? A summons. Sasuke shook his head. A rare power of the Mangekyo Sharingan, a secret I am duty-bound to only share inside the clan. Inoichi studied the construct but said nothing for some time. This black fire, this spectral warrior, can you still command these? The Uchiha dissolved the image and continued down the slope as Inoichi hurried to catch up. The former, perhaps. The latter's creation and control was a product of both my eyes, and now one is gone, the technique is lost to me. Beyond that, I am forbidden to say more. They had reached the trees and distant colors and shapes began to move around them. Sasuke clenched his teeth together and brought up several images at once. I lived for some time with one of the Uzumaki clan, deep in the land of the rice paddies. An image of Karen, older with her side cut, golden Uzumaki chains pouring from her back to ensnare something foul. She and I were close. A deliberate pause to allow Inoichi to draw his own conclusions, then a split-second flash of cave walls and discarded clothes. The incident had actually been her healing session after Orochimaru had injected him with 27 toxins at once, but it was intimate enough for a quick substitution. Slowly, painfully, he thought of his daughter. Sarada as she had been when he'd first seen her as a child, red quiapo, glasses, cheerful smile, and single tomo Sharingan. She'd been running down the road, excited to see him, and she'd stumbled into battle against more of Orochimaru's cloned abominations, namely Shin Uchiha. Inoichi's eyes softened just slightly at the image of the cheerful child, but he turned back to Sasuke. I can feel the weight in your mind. Show me the real image, not the one you force me to see. The pain won't kill you. Sasuke gave him a doubtful look and continued walking. A golden lasso of light wrapped it around his torso and flung him back into the tree, cracking it in half. Show me the truth, said Inoichi sharply, and Sasuke felt the light begin to sear into his clothes, his skin. That's not something you need to see. He grunted as the forest filled with the smell of cooking meat. Another Uchiha with the Sharingan, out in the world. I think that's something I need to see. Sasuke let the images with Karen dissolve and silently apologized to his ex-wife for the deception. It had caused them all a great deal of grief in the beginning, but if Sarada looked enough like Karen to pull this deception off twice, it was an advantage he would use. There weren't very many kunoichi with pink hair, so showing an older Sakura was impossible. Fine. The last thing he'd seen, Sarada's face lashed with rain and wind, twisted in anger as she cursed him, cursed his absence and failure as a father. The white arrow heading for her as the seal flared into being. Naruto's own look of horror as they both reached out. The arrow hit the composite Indra in the face, then darkness. Inoichi glanced at him, but Sasuke was riveted to the image. He reached out, then dropped his hand as the reality of the situation set in. She's gone. His voice is soft, but in the silence of the mountain Inoichi can hear him clearly. They're all gone, because they sent me away. It should have been any of them. They could make people listen, really listen. He shrugs. I'm just the spy. Seek out threats to the clan, to the village, to the nations, burn them down, look for the next one. Repeat until your daughter hates you and the people you love have forgotten how to return the favor. He storms down the mountain now, snow flying behind him as he barely even touches the ground beneath it. It is his mind, after all. It's not bound by gravity. Inoichi is still with him, but Sasuke knows what to do now. He throws up shards of the Fourth Great Ninja War, the charge against the Ten Tails. Dozens of Jonin and Chunin from the 5 great nations charge alongside one another into monstrosities buddied off of a true abomination. Men are devoured, drained of chakra, or are dragged into the earth to feed the roots of the divine tree. Inoichi tries to pause the memory, to stop and take a closer look, but Sasuke won't let that happen. He drags Inoichi onward, through images of solitary campfires in the deserts of Wind Country and of crowds of refugees flooding through the border to Fire Country. Despite himself, there is another flicker and the Yamanaka pounces on it. The campfire is no longer solitary. Instead the Indra composite is sharing it with the same blonde man from before. Their hands are buried in each other's hair and beneath their clothes. Inoichi replaces the false memory and has the grace to look slightly guilty about it. Sasuke feels his face season what he knows is an expression of longing, and he crushes it ruthlessly. He has to show Inoichi the most crucial part, the lie he's been building behind all the others, the lie that will convince the Jonin that Indra Uchiha can be trusted. He's smoothed out the wrinkles, the imperfections, the mistakes. If it was any closer, he would confuse it for the true memory and then he really might go insane. He points deeper into the forest, where the trees open into a swamp, and the water sloshes around their hamstrings, soaking their cloaks and pants. One more. He says and his voice sounds as shaky as he feels. He takes a deep breath as Inoichi nods. Keep it together Sasuke, you can do this. The last memories are the hardest because they are so close to the truth. The Uchiha clan hideout, his horror as Itachi explained the Mangekyou Sharingan, the revelation that Madara Uchiha was alive. He cut the memory off once Itachi's Susanoo manifested and it was clear the man had survived a bolt of lightning. Sasuke sat down in the marsh, holding his head in his hands. All he'd changed was his face and the name Itachi had shouted at him and even then, the memories still cut deep. Inoichi was leaning against a tree, the gold light connecting him and Sasuke gone. He too was in shock. Madara Uchiha, that's not possible. He's long dead. Sasuke didn't reply, so Inoichi looked down. The Uchiha was massaging his temples but otherwise did not respond. Standard TNI protocol was to wrench the man up and keep marching, but Inoichi'd had enough of the guided tour anyway. He continued through the swamp, moving through the trees when he could, walking through the water when he didn't. Images continued to flicker in front of him, none lasting more than an instant or two. A snake-eyed man in glasses and a hooded robe. All 4 Hokage standing in a line, covered in ash. A blade protruding from Indra's chest as he gasped weakly. A black, fluid substance that walked like a man and spoke of centuries of planning. A pale man with purple eyes erupting into a mass of tumors, which in turn burst to reveal. A woman as pale as the moon, with the pale eyes he'd seen among the Hyuga, but a cherry-red ringed thing in the center of her forehead. A lid closed over it and he realized it was an eye. She turned to look at him and the image shattered. He dropped out of the tree in surprise but managed to stick the landing. Indra was leaning against the tree and walked over as Inoichi looked up at him. Did she really dash? She saw you, said Sasuke, his eye glowing the red of the Sharingan. I don't know why or how, but she did. Her blasted clan keeps surprising us. There are more. The power he'd felt, the insanity, even for an instant, was staggering. Clearly beyond his own, perhaps even beyond that of the Hokage. Many more. Sasuke tapped the side of his head where his missing eye would be. That's why I came, why I needed to warn you. This devastation is what is coming, if I can't stop it. He spread his hands to indicate the vast sea of stars above them. There is so much I need to do, and I can't do it alone. My dear Uzumaki would have been far better at this, but I have to ask, will you help me? Inoichi shook his head. That's not my decision to make. And this interrogation is not done yet. He pointed into the distance, where the trees thinned out. Moonlight shone down on the vast lake they'd seen from the top of the mountain, and as they walked it soon became difficult to see if there had ever been a mountain, or a forest, or memories there at all. Inoichi cracked his knuckles and grinned as the glowing light he emitted pulsed around him. Now we get to the best part. Sasuke looked ahead and saw 5 versions of himself, their backs to him, standing in front of a pillar of moonlight. Got to change the faces before they turn, he thought, but even as he thought it, they turned to face him. The smallest wore Sarada's image, at 10 years old, sobbing as she tried to stop the tears on her face. Inoichi waved, but the girl dissolved into the water as he moved forward. The second figure, a dark-skinned, bat-winged version of Indra, looked up with hunger in his eyes. More power, he growled. Give me more power. A clawed hand reached towards Inoichi and the Jonin batted it away. The figure rose to its full height, lightning chakra tinged with dark energy running across its forearms until a blade erupted from its chest. The third figure, dressed in purple and tied around the waist with a bow, removed its sword and bowed deeply to Inoichi, conveying deep respect. You're nearly there, he said calmly as he held up a picture of a very specific bridge. Suddenly he and the picture were consumed in flames as an identical man stepped forward. Or at least, he would have been identical if not for the visible madness distorting his features. His lips stretched upward in a parody of mirth, and the cackle of deep insanity echoed from his chest as he clawed at his empty, bleeding eye sockets again and again. Liars! Liars, liars, traitors, thieves! You're so far from the truth you can't see anything. Madara showed me. Danzo showed me. Itachi tried to show me, but he failed. A village that kills its own people, that ruins lives again and again, all in the name of peace and strength, is built on lies. He all but howled the last word, and the vast spectral warrior Inoichi had seen before exploded into being around them, fist driving down at Inoichi as he fell onto the surface of the water. The golden light around him coalesced, but it wasn't fast enough. 2 Indras, identical in dark blue cloaks and long, dark hair, stepped in front of him, and the chakra construct dissolved like mist in the morning sun. They stepped forward and flowed into one another, combining until only 1 Indra remained. He leant down and Inoichi took the offered hand gratefully. Well, it would be a lie to say I was not myself for a very long time. I was what the shinobi system made me, a font of hatred and power that only had to be directed until it had exhausted its usefulness. I do not and will never apologize for my past actions against the leaf, for some wrongs are grievous enough there can be no restitution. Rather, I want to focus on doing what I have not done. He looked at the spot where Sarada had dissolved, regret passing across his features. As I said to the Hokage, I am not loyal to the Leaf Village, but its people. The Leaf Village as a whole allowed my clan to be isolated, insulted, and drove them to slaughter, and never looked back. Indra's Sharingan pulsed, and Inoichi felt a genjutsu take hold, even as he cracked his chakra to fight it off. Kai. Not yet, Inoichi-san, said Indra. One last thing for your eyes to see. The Hokage's private quarters rose around them, triptych wall scrolls, deep oak doors, and a single candle. Counselor Danzo stood next to the Hokage at his writing desk as Itachi Uchiha knelt in front of them both. There is no other recourse, then. Danzo shook his head. None, Hiruzen. The Hokage sighed and scrawled his signature across a piece of paper. Go, then, Itachi Uchiha. Do what you must. Itachi hesitated for a moment, then his eyes hardened. It will be done, my lord. As he vanished with a swirl of leaves, Indra beckoned Inoichi forward, his face grim. Operation Fire Break, Uchiha Extermination. End rank. Client, Sarutobi Hiruzen, Shinamura Danzo, Leaf Village. Parameters, Uchiha District, Leaf Village. Objective, elimination of all Uchiha clan hostiles. Secondary objectives, preserve children under the age of 10. Use notoriety to gain access to Akatsuki organization and report purpose and membership. Acceptable casualties, total elimination. Payment, Uchiha Sasuke survives. His route application will be terminated upon completion of the mission. Extraction site, the southern gate of the Leaf Village will remain unguarded from 11 p.m. to 12 p.m. Duration, permanent. Inoichi dropped the sheet, which burned as soon as it left his hands. The flickering embers did nothing to illuminate the darkness around him and only made the moonlight seem stronger. The Hokage's office fell away and Indra stood patiently where Itaki had knelt, looking back at him. You can believe that or not, I don't really care, Inoichi Yamanaka. You've seen all there is to see, now make your judgments. The Tni Jonin looked back calmly, though his heart felt like it was jackhammering against his ribcage. You tried to lie to me multiple times and have a past history of mental instability. I couldn't see all the seams, but I can feel when someone lies to me, Indra Uchiha. He crossed his arms. You haven't told me everything. Nor will I. The future I have seen is a dangerous thing, especially when someone tries to alter it. If it is to protect the people I love most in this village, I will lie without hesitation and you will have to rip my mind apart until it is a drooling vegetable to get at the truth. Inoichi let the golden light of his influence shine brighter and brighter in the space until the moon, the water, and even the stars reflected back the focused power of a Yamanaka mind. Sasuke felt the vast tide of a lifetime of memories begin to slip from his grasp, falling into the waiting hands of the man ready to decipher each one. You know no one in this village, because no one knows you. Desperation makes you an even worse liar, Uchiha-san. The Hokage would never order such an atrocity, it goes against every fiber of his being. Sasuke thought for a moment and remembered his Naruto, blazing with power in the crumbling remains of Konoha. This village is my home, and everyone here is my family. I won't let you have your way with us. Believe what you wish, Yamanaka. As I said, I have shown you what you need to know. You're a specialist Jonin, working for the Torture and Interrogation Division. Some things are always need to know, but this village is where my remaining family is, which means to me, it is now my home. That means more than any secrets I could or could not give you. Inoichi glowered and Sasuke felt the first true memory balance on the edge of his control. If one fell, Inoichi would see the source, and then he'd see everything. Please. For an instant of heart-stopping terror he thought Inoichi would keep pushing, but the Jonin nodded and the golden light dimmed. You keep a great many secrets next to your lies, Uchiha-san, he said as his hands twisted into the signs necessary to release the jutsu. Just pray none of them get confused. In the dimly lit hospital room, Inoichi took his hands from Sasuke, who glanced over at the Hokage. The man was smoking his pipe next to the window, while Crane and Spider lurked in the corners. Inoichi spoke first. How long? Spider lifted a wrist to reveal a slim watch. 2 hours, 16 minutes, 12 seconds, sir. The Yamanaka nodded. Acceptable. His mind wasn't as difficult to navigate as I had feared. And your verdict? The Hokage remained focused on the Konoha tree lean outside. Inoichi looked at Indra, whose mouth was set in a thin line. He was going to regret this. Indra Uchiha is reasonably trustworthy. He admitted as the Hokage turned to face them. He lied repeatedly but only on matters of personal and reasonably private significance. The threats he mentioned to your lordship and Counselor Danzo are indeed real. Indra's mouth fell open as the Yamanaka continued. He has a self-confessed history of psychological instability, which I believe resulted from a difficult upbringing and the likely death or forced abandonment of his family. Crane shifted uncomfortably. Should we really dash? Inoichi cut him off. His conduct within his own mind demonstrates a regard for the well-being of his interrogator as well as a regard for individuals within the Leaf Village. He has admitted to distrust of the shinobi system and blames the inaction of the village for the death of the Uchiha. This all sounds like someone who should be put in a very deep, dark cell, Yamanaka-san, said Eagle. Did he rip out the part of your brain that knows who to trust? No, Eagle-san. His conduct is egregious, but I believe in his desire to aid the citizens of the Leaf. Additionally, his memories and actions demonstrate progression from these beliefs and an ability to mollify or eliminate his worst instincts. In light of his history, I would recommend inducting him as a ninja and citizen of Konohagakure, as well as a place within the Uchiha clan. In summation, I believe that Indra Uchiha falls well within the mental operating parameters for a shinobi of Konoha. However, he warned with a grin. I expect him to make a run for your head at some point, Sarutobi. The Hokage smiled, pleased for once to have his instincts confirmed instead of his worst fears. Finally, a bit of good news. Now, you just rest up and, in a month, or so, you should be cleared to leave the hospital. Sasuke's shock turned to horror. A month. Sarutobi grunted in amusement around his pipe. Willing to jump out of bed for missions, you're already halfway to being a Konoha shinobi. Stay in that bed and you might even have some visitors. Indra looked around the room, but there was only shared amusement from Inoichi and silence from the Umbu. Fine. Can one of you pass me a magazine or something? He gestured at the moonlit night outside. I won't be sleeping anytime soon. The Hokage nodded and made his way out the door, followed by the Umbu. Inoichi lingered. I know what you're going to ask. Why dash? Because my son was taken by Route 2, said the Jonin quietly. You lied when you could, hit as many faces as possible, but the details were true. The feelings were true. He looked Sasuke in the face once more even as Crane looked back questioningly. You want to help, so I'm going to let you. Just don't start a revolution before my pension kicks in. He filed out as Sasuke was still processing that last statement. When the door closed, Sasuke flopped back onto his pillows. Bringing his hand up to his remaining eye, Sasuke began the same fingertip exercises he'd used when he lost his arm years earlier, in a very different Konoha. Thumb, index, middle, ring, little finger. Thumb, index, middle, ring, little finger. Thumb, index. It was going to be a long night. Inoichi Yamanaka had been taught the mind invasion jutsu by his father and had studied it further in the Yamanaka clan scrolls. The warnings had been many, and they had been very specific. Afterwards it recommended a low-sensory diet of rice, beans, and water to minimize disorientation. Absolutely no mind-altering substances or alcohol. Inoichi went to a bar and drank himself under the table. Check the description for the links to the author.